Hello everyone. Before we start, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel and leave a comment with where you're from and what time you're watching. That way, YouTube will keep showing you stories just like this one. Now let's begin. It started like most uneventful weekends. I had just settled into a cramped one-bedroom apartment on the outer edge of a city called Pinebrook. It wasn't exactly charming. Worn carpet, mismatched paint, and a heater that clanged like a pipe organ. But it was affordable, quiet, and close enough to my new job that I could walk when my aging Honda finally coughed its last breath. The building itself was strange. This dated, boxy brick complex sitting awkwardly in the middle of a suburban neighborhood that looked like it had been frozen in the late 80s. Perfectly trimmed lawns, American flags in the flower beds, rusty basketball hoops leaning over cracked driveways, all wrapping around this apartment like someone had accidentally dropped it there from a helicopter. I hadn't had time to explore the area yet, too busy unpacking and adjusting to the weird quiet of living alone. But when my best friend Laurel came to crash for the weekend, it felt like the perfect excuse to finally venture out. "Want to hit some thrift stores?" she asked as she kicked off her sneakers and collapsed into the couch like she owned it. I'm in the mood to dig through junk and convince myself it's vintage. I laughed. God, yes. I need dishes that don't look like they came from a gas station giveaway. And Goodwill never lets me down. That Saturday, we spent the day drifting from one secondhand shop to the next. The kind with peeling linoleum floors and racks so tightly packed you had to walk sideways. Laurel bought this hideous ceramic clown with smeared makeup and a cracked foot. Said it was tragically beautiful. I found a stack of mismatched plates for $5 that didn't match anything but felt like a win. We were on our third iced coffee and still buzzing with the thrill of low-stakes treasure hunting when we finally pulled back into my parking lot. "I swear," Laurel said as I eased the car into a space, "one day we're going to find a haunted mirror, like something that whispers in Latin when the lights are off." I smirked. "You want that to happen. Admit it." She grinned and leaned forward, pointing through the windshield. "Okay, but wait, what's that?" A small, weather-worn yard sign stood at the corner where my street curved toward the main road. At first glance, it looked like one of those leftover campaign signs people forget to take down after elections. But as we drove closer, we saw it had a piece of paper taped over the original print, white printer paper, handwritten in thick, uneven black Sharpie. Sale, 84 Butler Avenue. The whole thing was held together with random strips of duct tape that fluttered in the breeze like someone had slapped it together last minute and walked off without checking it twice. "That's got weird energy," I said, squinting at it. Laurel shrugged. "Could be someone offloading furniture. We're still in junk hunting mode." She rubbed her hands together like a cartoon villain. "Let's go." Right as we stepped outside, the rain started. Not a downpour, just that light, misty drizzle that makes the air smell like damp earth and cold concrete. We threw on hoodies, left the umbrellas behind, and took the short walk through the neighborhood. It was quiet. A couple of cars rolled past and an older man across the street was mowing his lawn despite the rain picking up. We passed a house still covered in Halloween decorations, which was wild considering it was nearly the end of November. Laurel pointed to a skeletal Santa propped against the porch. "Bold," she said. "Skeleton Santa is definitely a vibe." I laughed, but as we turned the corner onto Butler Avenue, something changed. The houses here were spaced farther apart, older. No porch lights, no motion sensor lamps flickering on. Just shadows creeping across sagging porches and yards gone a little wild. The rain intensified to a steady patter, soaking the tops of our hoods. I started to regret not bringing an umbrella. "Maybe we just do a quick look and head back," I murmured. Laurel nodded but didn't say anything. When we reached 84 Butler, the unease set in hard. The house sat low behind a line of overgrown bushes, a squat gray structure with peeling paint and sagging gutters. No signs of life, no tables on the lawn, no racks of clothes, not even a folding chair, just a lonely silver sedan in the driveway with a faded "for sale" sign taped to the inside of the windshield. Laurel tilted her head. "Is this it?" I double-checked the curb where the number was faintly painted in chipped white. "Yeah, this is the one." She scanned the empty driveway. Guess they packed up. Or the rain scared them off. Maybe. But I wasn't convinced. Something about the place felt stale. Like the air around it had been holding its breath for too long. I took a few steps closer, peering through the rain-speckled air, and that's when I saw it. Taped right to the front door was a sheet of printer paper, standard white, the kind you'd pull straight from a home office tray. On it, in bold all caps, someone had typed, "Sale is inside. Come on in." I stopped cold. That's weird, right? Laurel squinted at the door, then turned to me, her expression tightening. Not just weird, like deeply weird. Who just tells strangers to come inside for a sale? That's not normal. I nodded slowly, uneasy. It feels wrong. Below that typed sign was another piece of paper, this one more weathered. It looked almost like parchment, wrinkled, corners curled from moisture, barely hanging on by a strip of yellowed tape. The top corner had a faint seal stamped into it, official looking. The text was in Spanish. I didn't know much of the language, but a couple of words jumped out at me. Notificación and desalojo. Is that an eviction notice? I asked, leaning closer. Laurel scanned it quickly, voice lower now. Yeah, looks like it. I climbed the porch steps carefully, the boards groaning a little under my weight, and tried to get a better look through the front window. The glass was smudged with grime, streaked from the rain. I cupped my hands to block the glare and leaned in. The room beyond was completely barren. No couch, no TV, not even a rug. Just blank, slightly stained beige carpet stretching wall to wall and a toppled stack of newspapers slumped in one corner. Farther back, I could barely make out a kitchen. Empty counters, no magnets on the fridge, no dishes in the sink. Not even a towel hanging from the oven handle. It didn't look like anyone lived there. This doesn't feel right, I muttered, stepping off the porch. Let's go. Laurel didn't hesitate. Yeah, let's... Before she could finish, the front door creaked open. We both froze. It didn't swing wide, just a slow, deliberate shift, maybe 3 inches at most. Like someone was standing behind it, pushing it open just enough to peek through. But we didn't hear anything. No footsteps, no voices, no boards creaking under a stranger's weight. Just the steady rhythm of rain overhead and the occasional whisper of a car passing down the main road. Laurel, I whispered, barely able to breathe. We need to leave. Now. She didn't argue. We turned and power-walked back toward the apartment, adrenaline hot in my chest. I didn't dare look back, afraid of what I might see in that cracked doorway. We made it halfway before Laurel finally broke the silence. Did you hear anything? She asked, not quite whispering, not quite speaking. Anyone in there? I shook my head. Nothing, not a sound. But the door, it still opened. We didn't talk about it much after that. Just made popcorn, put on some ridiculous horror movie with bad effects and worse acting, and tried to pretend it hadn't happened. Pretended we weren't rattled. But we were. Laurel left the next morning, and the weirdness didn't leave with her. It clung to the edges of the day, like the smell of something burning that you can't quite locate. I found myself thinking about the house constantly. So that afternoon, I drove past 84 Butler again. It looked the same. No lights on. No movement inside. No cars in the driveway except for that same silver sedan with the faded "for sale" sign. The sale inside paper was still taped to the door, sagging a little more than the day before. And the next day, still the same. But on the third day, there was something new. A small sign taped to a lamppost at the far end of the block, handwritten like the others. This one said, "Final day, everything must go. 84 Butler Avenue." Someone was still trying to lure people in. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, fingers hovering over my phone, debating whether I was being ridiculous. Finally, I dialed the non-emergency police line. "Hi, I'm not sure if this is anything," I started, But there's this house with fake-looking yard sale signs and possibly an eviction notice. It's been like that for days. No one ever comes or goes, but someone keeps putting up new signs. The dispatcher was polite but didn't sound overly concerned. "We'll send someone out to take a look," she said. I don't know if anyone ever did. Later that night, I was curled up on the couch, half reading, half dozing when I heard it. A sound so soft I wasn't sure I'd heard it at all at first. 3 knocks. Not on the front door. On the sliding glass door at the back of the apartment. My heart jerked. I sat frozen, staring toward the kitchen where the curtains were still drawn. My place backed up to a patch of woods. No sidewalks, no walking paths. There was no reason anyone should be back there. None. I sat like that, paralyzed, for almost 20 minutes before I worked up the courage to pull the curtain aside. No one was there. But taped to the outside of the glass, soggy, torn at the corners, its ink smudging from the rain, was a single sheet of paper. Sale inside 84 Butler Ave. I moved out 2 weeks later. I never found out who was posting the signs. I don't know if the house was ever condemned or if the city ever investigated. I never went back to that street. In fact, I avoided even driving near it. But I still wonder sometimes who was inside that house. Was someone squatting there trying to lure people in? For robbery? For something worse? Or maybe no one lived there at all. Maybe the house wasn't abandoned. Maybe it was waiting. Waiting for someone curious. Someone alone. Someone who wouldn't think twice about stepping inside. I used to think a yard sale would be an easy, even therapeutic way to get rid of the clutter in my life. Growing up, I'd seen so many old crockpots, stacks of DVDs, and half-full bags of baby clothes laid out on mismatched tables. Neighbors stopping by with coffee in hand, kids running through lawns, casual small talk over nickels and quarters. It always looked so harmless, so mundane. I never thought mine would be anything but that. But then again, nothing about that summer was going the way I thought it would. I was 25 and emotionally wrecked, barely out of a breakup that had gutted me from the inside out. Anger and heartbreak were still buzzing under the surface, even as I tried to act like I was fine. I'd been living in the same tiny house in Elmdale for 3 years, quiet little town just west of St. Louis, the kind of place where you nodded at your neighbors from across the street and saw the same cashier every Tuesday at the grocery store. But I wasn't from there, and even after 3 years I still felt like an outsider, like someone passing through. After things ended with my ex, I made a decision. I was moving to Kansas City. New job, new city, fresh start. That yard sale was supposed to be my first step toward leaving it all behind. All week, I sorted through the life I was ready to leave. I pulled dusty boxes out of closets, moved chipped furniture into the garage, taped handwritten labels to bins full of things I hadn't touched in years. I picked a Saturday morning in early August, even though I knew the Midwest humidity would be suffocating. Sure enough, the air felt like it had weight, like it pressed down on your skin with wet hands. By 7:30 a.m., I had folding tables stretching across my driveway and spilling into the lawn. I even made coffee and set out a cooler with bottled water, trying to channel those calm, domestic images I'd grown up seeing. My best friend Carly was supposed to come help, but her kid had a fever and she bailed last minute. I told her it was no big deal. I could handle it. I didn't realize at the time that being alone was my first mistake. By 8 p.m., the early birds started to arrive. Mostly older couples, the kind who wake up at dawn and know how to haggle. A few young families drifted in, the kids squealing over plastic toys while their parents shuffled through bins of books or dishware. I smiled, chatted, handed out change, even got a few compliments on my display. For a while it was actually kind of nice, peaceful. Then she showed up. It was 9:45. I remember checking my phone because the heat was already turning my t-shirt into a second skin. She walked up the driveway like she knew exactly where she was going. Mid-40s maybe, black leggings, loose floral top, Her dark hair knotted into a messy bun that looked more practical than stylish. She barely glanced at the rest of the tables before heading straight to the one where I'd laid out the good stuff, designer items, the few luxury pieces I owned. And then she zeroed in on the sandals. They were strappy leather wedges with gold buckles, still in the box, tags untouched. I'd never worn them. Retail, they went for somewhere between $220 and $300. My ex, Travis, we'll call him that, had brought them back from a business trip in Vegas. The same trip where he apparently drank too much, gambled too much, and slept with a woman he met at a blackjack table. I found out about that 3 days later, thanks to an anonymous message with blurry but clear enough photos attached. I never wore the sandals. Couldn't even take them out of the closet without feeling nauseous. They were beautiful, yes, but tainted, so I slapped a $5 sticker on the box. It wasn't about the money. I wanted them gone. I wanted someone to walk away with a steal, someone who deserved them, someone who wasn't me. She lifted the box like it might explode, then opened it slowly, peeled the tissue paper back like she was unwrapping a secret. Her eyes sparkled when she saw the shoes. $5? She asked. Yep, I said, folding a shirt behind the table. Brand new, never worn. She tilted her head, considering. I give you $2. I looked up, confused. Sorry, I said, trying to keep my tone friendly. Price is firm. Come on, she said, her voice turning harder. You won't get $5 for these. They're not even that nice. I paused, heart rate kicking up a little. They retail for over $200, I said, trying to keep calm. You're getting a deal. She didn't blink. Then why are you selling them for $5? What's wrong with them? Her words landed heavier than they should have, like she was prodding at something personal, something ugly I hadn't meant to share. Nope, I said, tightening my jaw as I forced a polite smile. Just don't need them anymore. She scoffed, flipping the box over to inspect the soles like she expected cracks or mold to crawl out. I folded my arms, trying to keep my annoyance in check. A few people nearby had slowed their browsing, subtly watching us, probably sensing the tension. I give you $250, she said suddenly. It's $5, I replied, more firmly this time. Sorry. She stared at me like I'd just insulted her ancestors. Then, just like that, something in her snapped. She slammed the lid shut and hurled the box back onto the table. The sandals tumbled out and skidded across the surface with a clatter. You think you better than me? She shouted, her voice sharp and full of fury. You think I don't know shoes? Heads turned. A couple holding coffee froze. A little girl dropped a toy she'd been holding. Ma'am, please, I said carefully, hands raised slightly. Don't you ma'am me, you skinny little bitch, she snarled. Her accent had thickened suddenly. Slavic, maybe? Balkan? Each word hard and guttural, landing like a slap. You think I can't afford them? You think I need your charity? I stood there stunned, blinking. My mouth opened, but nothing came out right away. My pulse was thudding at my temples. I think we're done here, I finally managed. She spit out a string of curses in a language I didn't understand, her eyes blazing. Then she turned, stomping down the street, her sandals hitting the pavement like gunshots. I was shaking, physically shaking. My hands hovered near my waist as if I expected her to double back. Near the jewelry table, a woman muttered, "What the hell was that?" Completely unhinged, someone else said under their breath. Another person helped me collect the sandals. I wanted to call it quits, to pack up and pretend this morning hadn't happened. But I'd only made about $60 and there was still a decent crowd. So I took a deep breath, made some awkward joke about yard sale drama, and kept going. That was mistake number 2. 15 minutes later, I saw her again. She was charging up the sidewalk like a storm front, dragging a man behind her. He was huge, 6'4" at least, thick neck, wide chest, arms like tree trunks. His stained gray t-shirt clung to his torso, and he wore camo shorts and work boots, even in the heat. His face was blank until he saw me. Then it twisted. They didn't browse, didn't hesitate. They came straight to the table, straight to me. "You the one trying to rip off my wife?" he barked. "What?" I blinked. "No, I didn't rip anyone off. You tried to sell her some broken-ass shoes for $5 after disrespecting her like that." "I didn't disrespect anyone," I said, stepping back. "She offered $2, I said no. That's it." "She said you embarrassed her. Said you humiliated her in front of everyone." "She screamed at me," I shot back, louder than I meant to. I tried to stay calm. He slammed his palm down on the table, hard. A ceramic mug tipped over and shattered. "You think this is a joke? You think you're funny?" People were backing away. I saw a woman scoop up her toddler and practically sprint toward her car. A man across the street paused mid-step and watched from behind a bush. The woman, his wife, was now back at the table, gripping the sandal box like it was hers by right. She yanked on it, trying to pull it away from me. "You don't want trouble," the man growled. "Give her the damn shoes." My chest was tight. I couldn't feel my fingers. I'm 5'3", barely 120 pounds on a good day. This man could have snapped me in half, and no one was stepping in, except someone did. "Hey!" a voice rang out across the street. 2 women approached fast, both in workout gear. One already had her phone up, camera pointed, the other was dialing. "Back off," one of them said. "We're calling the cops." The man froze. His eyes darted to the camera. "You serious right now?" he hissed, voice low and full of fury. "Dead serious," the woman said. "Walk away." For a long second, he didn't move, just stared at me with pure white-hot anger. Then, with a jerk, he grabbed his wife's wrist and yanked her toward the street. She screamed something else at me, more foreign curses, something ugly. But I didn't even register it. I was shaking too hard. They got into an old black Suburban, peeled out, tires screeching. I packed up everything right after that. Didn't care about the noon crowd. Didn't care that half my stuff was still unsold. I just wanted it done. The 2 women who stepped in stayed with me while I loaded things into the garage. I must have thanked them 20 times. We shared a half laugh, half sob about garage sale horror stories, but the adrenaline had burned something raw inside me. I felt hollow, sick. That night I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling fan spinning slow overhead, and kept thinking about how fast it all turned. How one bad interaction over shoes could have ended in something so much worse. If those women hadn't stepped in, if no one had pulled out a phone, if that man had decided $5 was worth violence. I sold the sandals online the next week, got $90 for them. But that $5, that almost became the most expensive mistake of my life. I never really meant to host a yard sale. It only happened because I physically ran out of space in my cramped 2-bedroom rental tucked on the west side of Elmsworth. The place had become a maze of leftover college furniture, unopened boxes from my last move, and things I hadn't used in months, maybe years. It wasn't that I was a hoarder. I was just overworked. With 2 jobs pulling me in opposite directions, I barely had time to cook, let alone sort through clutter. But eventually, it started to feel like the walls were closing in on me. So I picked a Saturday in mid-May, cleared my schedule, and committed. The weather had finally turned the corner, sunny but not yet too hot. Good yard sale weather. I figured that might draw people out, especially if I advertised. I tacked a few signs up at the local grocery store, posted in a couple Facebook yard sale groups, and made a quick listing on Nextdoor. I didn't expect much, honestly, but the response surprised me. A few people commented, asked questions, one even said, "See you Saturday." The night before, I stayed up later than I should have, surrounded by piles of stuff and a roll of masking tape. I used a Sharpie to price everything. Clothes I hadn't worn since college, mismatched dishes, old Bluetooth speakers, paperbacks, 2 lamps, a scratched-up coffee table, and after way too much internal debate, my PS4. I loved that console, but I hadn't powered it on in almost 8 months. Life had swallowed my free time whole, so I set it out, reluctantly, pricing it at $250. 2 controllers, 6 solid games. It was a high number, sure, but on purpose. I wasn't eager to let it go. If someone really wanted it, fine, but they'd have to be serious. By 6:30 a.m., everything was laid out on folding tables in my driveway. My street's usually quiet, nestled near a park, but Saturdays bring out the early birds. The professional bargain hunters showed up first, mostly older folks, polite and chatty. I heard things like, "Oh, I had one of these in '85, and do you know if this blanket's cotton?" They browsed leisurely, a few mugs sold, some books. The PS4 caught a few glances, but no offers. Then around 9 a.m. she showed up. She came alone, walking in from the street. Maybe late 30s, early 40s, pale skin, ash blonde hair tucked under a massive floppy sun hat. Her sunglasses were oversized, completely hiding her eyes, and her body language was wrong, rigid, deliberate. She didn't smile, didn't glance around, just moved like she had a target. "Morning," I said, trying to sound casual. No answer. She walked right up to the table with the electronics, eyes locked on the PS4 like it was the only thing that existed. She sifted through the stack of games with practiced hands, flipping each case with quick, decisive motions. "These are $10 each?" she asked, voice flat and toneless. "Yep," I nodded. "All in good shape. No scratches." She let out a dry, almost scoffing sound. "You know these are ancient, right?" I shrugged, forcing a half smile. "They still go for more at GameStop." "It's a yard sale," she snapped. Her tone was sharp, like I'd insulted her. "You're supposed to be giving people deals." "I'm not giving them away," I replied, keeping my voice even. I could feel a knot forming in my gut. Something about her made my skin prickle. She dropped the games hard, just shy of throwing them. The plastic cases clacked sharply on the table. "Price gouging, that's what this is," she muttered. "Taking advantage of people." I didn't answer. There was no point. Her energy had turned the air thick. Then she spun on her heel and started muttering again, this time louder. "No one's gonna buy your overpriced junk," she spat. "That PS4 is gonna rot out here." And with that, she left. I didn't say anything, just stood there, watching her walk away. Her presence had left something greasy behind, an uneasiness I couldn't shake. About 20 minutes later, I saw her again. She was across the street this time, walking slow. Didn't look at me, just passed by. Then again and again. 3 times in 1 hour. No glance in my direction, no acknowledgement. Just walking, pacing, looping the block. Maybe she lived nearby, I told myself. Maybe she was just weird. God knows this neighborhood has its fair share. The rest of the day played out mostly normal. I sold the coffee table, both lamps, and a bunch of books. A teenager stopped to ask about the PS4, said he'd come back with cash. Never did. By 3:00 p.m., I started packing up what didn't sell. My body was sore, my feet ached. I shoved the PS4 back in its box like it had personally betrayed me. That night, I made some boxed mac and cheese, collapsed on the couch, and mindlessly scrolled through Instagram while some reality show murmured in the background. By 11:30, I powered everything down and shuffled off to bed. And then I heard it. A soft sound. Barely there. A metallic clink. Light, precise, deliberate. Then again, clink. Clink. Like something small and metallic tapping against metal. I froze in the hallway just outside my bedroom, heart ticking loud in my chest. The living room was still dark. I hadn't turned on any lights. I didn't want to announce where I was. Quietly, I edged toward the front window and peeked through the blinds. The empty street looked calm, still wrapped in the hush of midnight. But something felt wrong. Off. My stomach churned. I turned and made my way to the kitchen, the tiles cold under my feet. Past the laundry nook was the side door, barely ever used and never at night. I didn't flip the porch light, just gently pulled the curtain on the small square window to peek out. And there she was, the woman from earlier. Same oversized sunglasses, even at night. Same sun hat, now wilted in the dark. She was crouched by the door, her face angled down, fingers working at the lock with something thin and metallic. My heart stuttered. For a second, I couldn't move. I just stared. She looked almost comical, like someone playing spy in a bad movie. Suburban mom turned cat burglar. But that image broke the second I remembered. Someone was actively trying to break into my house. I stumbled back a step and reached behind the kitchen door for the old aluminum bat. My ex left it behind years ago and I'd never bothered to move it. Now it felt like a lifeline. Clutching it tight, I crept back to the window. She was still there, twisting something in the lock. My fingers were slick with sweat. I yanked the curtain aside and slammed my palm against the glass. "Hey!" She jolted. Something clattered onto the porch, a pin or pick or whatever she'd been using. She straightened slowly and stared right at me through the glass. "If you don't leave right now," I shouted, my voice louder than I expected, "I swear to God I will come out there and crack your skull open." She didn't flinch, didn't blink. Her face didn't move at all. She just looked at me, expressionless, calm. And then, without a word, she turned and walked away. Disappeared into the night. I didn't sleep, not even a little. I sat on the couch all night with the bat across my lap and the hallway light on. My ears strained at every creak, every gust of wind. The next morning I checked every single lock, twice. And I didn't report it. I couldn't really explain why. Maybe I didn't want the hassle. Or maybe I was afraid that acknowledging it, making it real, would escalate things. I went to work that afternoon, did a short shift at the diner, pretended things were normal. That night, I slid a wooden chair under the side doorknob and kept the bat beside my bed. Nothing happened. No sounds. No knocks. No visitors. But it wasn't over. 3 nights after the yard sale, I came home from work and noticed something weird. One of my recycling bins had been moved. It was standing directly in front of the side door, like someone had used it to stand on. I bent down and saw them, scuff marks in the paint just below the lock. The next day, I bought a camera online, just a cheap one, plugged it in, mounted it discreetly, aimed it right at the side door. That night, I reviewed the footage before bed, and at exactly 12:17 a.m., movement. She was back. Same clothes, same hat, same sunglasses. She didn't try the door this time, didn't touch anything. She just stood there, hands hanging loose at her sides. No movement, no sound. She stayed like that for nearly 6 minutes. Then she turned and walked away. I finally called the police. The officer who showed up was polite, but I could see it in his face. He thought I was overreacting. "You know her?" he asked. "She came to my yard sale," I said. "Got upset about the prices, that's it." He raised an eyebrow. "And you think she's targeting you over video games?" I felt stupid even saying it out loud. "It sounds dumb, I know, but I have footage." They took the report, promised to keep an eye on the area, but that wasn't the end. Over the next 2 weeks, she came back, again and again, always between midnight and 1 a.m., never tried the door again, just stood there, staring. Then one night, she wasn't alone. At 12:39 a.m., the camera picked up motion. First her, then a second figure stepped into frame, taller, broader, wearing a dark hoodie that shadowed his face. He stayed at the edge of the camera's view like he knew where it stopped. She walked up to the door again. This time, she pulled something from her bag. A small spray bottle. The next morning, I found the words faintly written across the door in dull red. "Thieves burn." That broke me. I didn't even pack, just grabbed a bag, locked up, and drove to my cousin's house across the river. 3 days passed before I went back. When I did, everything was normal. No more appearances, no more messages, no strange figures. The camera caught nothing after that. I still don't know who she was, or what she wanted, or how far she might have gone. All I know is this: I kept the PS4, and I've never had another yard sale. I never thought a lazy Saturday morning would pull me into something so strange, something I still can't explain, let alone forget. It was late January, one of those heavy, overcast mornings where everything feels muffled, like the world's wrapped in wool. I'd only just moved to a small town outside Asheville, North Carolina. Still water. Tiny place, barely 5,000 people if you counted pets. I was staying in this old house my aunt left behind when she moved to Florida, a real fixer-upper. My days were mostly spent patching up drywall, scraping off layers of wallpaper, and trying to breathe some life back into the place. It felt like it had been asleep for decades. Dust, old wood, the occasional drafty moan from the vents. I wasn't out hunting for anything that morning, just running an errand to the hardware store. On the way home, I saw a handwritten sign duct-taped to a crooked fence post. Yard sale today, with a red arrow pointing down a narrow road. I turned, curiosity more than intention pushing me forward. The street wound through an older part of town. Faded ranch houses, some with paint peeling like sunburnt skin, porches leaning inward as if whispering to each other. Everything looked tired, but charming in a quiet, worn-out kind of way. The sale was small. One folding table, a couple plastic bins, and a woman, late 50s maybe, bundled in a moss-green cardigan with pilled sleeves. Her expression matched the weather, gray, unreadable. She gave me a small nod as I parked and got out. On the table, chipped coffee mugs, faded holiday tinsel, a stack of VHS tapes still in paper sleeves. I glanced over them out of politeness, my hands jammed into my coat pockets. That's when I noticed the mirror. It leaned awkwardly against a tree, slightly off kilter, like someone had dragged it out but changed their mind halfway through. The frame caught my eye. Dark oak, hand-carved with swirling vines and flowers, almost gothic in detail. It stood about 5 feet tall and looked like it weighed 100 pounds. The glass had that old look to it, uneven and soft, like everything reflected in it belonged in a memory. "You like it?" the woman asked, her voice just loud enough to carry. I turned, startled. She was watching me carefully. "I never really cared for that thing," she added. "My sister left it when she passed, figured I'd get rid of it." There was something about the way she said it. Not sadness, not bitterness, just absence. "It's beautiful," I said, taking a few steps closer. "If you're buying anything else, just take it," she said flatly. "Honestly, I'd rather not haul it back inside." I picked out a ceramic bowl and a reading lamp. $10 total, more out of politeness than interest. She wrapped the lamp in an old towel and handed me the bowl. Together, we loaded the mirror into the back of my Jeep. As I shut the hatch, she muttered, "Be careful with it." The tone of her voice made me pause, but she had already turned away. Back at the house, I set the mirror in the dining room against a blank wall. I didn't have a spot for it yet, and I definitely wasn't ready to mount it. Old plaster walls and all that. I figured I'd clean it up first, see if it still held charm once the grime came off. I grabbed glass cleaner and a roll of paper towels and started wiping it down, humming absently. The dining room light flickered once, then again. I looked up, annoyed but not surprised. The wiring in the place had been a mess since day one, but what did surprise me was how the cats reacted. Knox and Luna, my 2 rescues, usually trotted around like they owned the place. But now they were frozen just past the hallway, crouched low, ears flat, staring at the mirror. Neither moved. "Knox?" I said softly. "It's just a mirror, bud." He didn't blink. Luna's tail flicked once, sharply. That night, I had the first dream. I was standing in front of the mirror, only it wasn't in my house anymore. It was in a large room I didn't recognize, filled with old furniture draped in white sheets. The kind of room you'd see in an estate that hadn't been touched in decades. The air felt thick, like the buildup before a thunderstorm. In the mirror, my reflection was looking back, but it blinked half a second after. I did. I woke up drenched in sweat, heart racing. I tried to remember what came next in the dream, but the moment after that delayed blink, there was a shift, something subtle but deeply wrong. Over the next week it got worse. At first, just little things. A shadow flickering across the room when nothing moved. A shape in the mirror, like a shoulder, a head, standing behind me, only for it to vanish when I turned around. One night, I watched the mirror as I brushed my teeth from the bathroom across the hall. I moved my hand, then paused. In the reflection, I moved, just after. I stood there, toothbrush frozen in midair, heart slowly hammering. Something was off. Something inside that mirror wasn't just showing my reflection. It was watching me back. A delay. Subtle, but real. Barely half a second. But enough. "Maybe you're just stressed," Kelsey said over the phone when I finally told her what had been going on. "New house, new town. It's a lot. Brains do weird stuff when we're overwhelmed." "I know what I saw," I said quietly, pacing the living room. "And it's not just me. The cats won't even step foot in the dining room anymore. They just sit in the hallway and stare, like they're waiting for something to come out." There was a pause on her end. "You want me to come stay a night or two?" she offered. "I mean, it's probably nothing, but still." "It's fine," I lied, though my grip on the phone had gone clammy. Just needed to say it out loud. But saying it didn't help, not really, especially not after what happened that Tuesday. I came home from a grocery run, arms full of bags, and the first thing I noticed, the mirror had moved. Not fallen, not tilted. It was still standing, just now about 6 or 7 inches away from the wall, still upright. No paw prints, no drag marks, nothing that could explain how a 100-pound slab of glass decided to shift itself. I stood there staring at it for a long time, heart thudding. Finally, I threw a heavy blanket over it. Out of sight, out of mind, right? Only the next morning the blanket was gone. Not on the floor, not crumpled nearby. Gone. I searched the house and found it, hours later, balled up inside the dryer. I hadn't done laundry in 2 days. That night I had the dream again. The room with the shrouded furniture, the heavy stillness in the air, the mirror standing at the center like a sentinel. Only this time, my reflection didn't move. I waved. I leaned in. Nothing. Then it smiled. That slow, knowing kind of smile you see in nightmares, stretched just a little too wide. I woke up screaming, tangled in my sheets, drenched in sweat. My dad came to visit that weekend. I didn't say anything about the mirror. I didn't have to. "Where'd you get that thing?" he asked casually while passing through the dining room, glancing at it like it had hissed at him. "Yard sale," I said, keeping my voice even. "Why?" He stepped back a little. "I don't know. Just gives me a weird feeling." That evening, while we were halfway through a movie, he looked toward the hallway and muttered, "Swear I just saw someone walk past that damn mirror." I moved it the next morning, dragged it into the hallway closet, propped it up behind a stack of boxes, and slammed the door shut. It helped, for a while, until it didn't. Late at night I started hearing noises, soft knocks, not on wood, on glass. Sometimes I heard a slow dragging sound like nails raking down a window pane. One night I found the closet door cracked open. The mirror was still there, leaning, untouched. But the latch was unhooked. I hadn't touched that door in days. The worst was about a week ago. I was cooking dinner, onions sizzling on the stove, filling the kitchen with warmth and scent. Then I heard it. Knock. Sharp. Deliberate. Right behind me. I spun around expecting to see someone at the window, but I live on the second story. No balcony, no ladder, nothing beneath that window but air, no movement, no face. But I felt it, like something had noticed me. A presence, cold and ancient, brushing up my spine. I posted an online listing that night. Vintage antique mirror, free to good home, pickup only. I didn't mention why. I just wanted it gone. People messaged. A few asked if it was still available. No one ever came. And the dreams got worse. Now I'm there every night, back in that room. Same white-sheeted furniture, same suffocating stillness. The mirror waits. And now the reflection doesn't just smile, it speaks. Whispers, scratchy, rasping syllables I can't make out, but I feel them. I wake up with the words still clinging to my ears, echoing like static. Every time I wake up, I swear I've just missed someone leaving the room. The air's still disturbed. I don't know anymore if it's the mirror that's haunted, or if I am. Yesterday, I tried to destroy it. I dragged it out into the yard, gripping a hammer so tightly my knuckles ached. I stood over it, raised my arm, and froze. The sky above me was cloudy, but in the mirror, it was pitch black, starless. Like the glass didn't reflect. It revealed something else, something looking back. And then, for just a second, it moved. A shape, human maybe, leaning forward from the other side. I dropped the hammer and ran. I haven't gone back outside since. I don't know what to do. Part of me thinks if I throw it away, whatever this is will just follow me. Another part of me thinks, I waited too long. This morning, I found something carved into my bathroom mirror. Not written, not drawn. Carved. 3 words. Let me out. This isn't just an object anymore, it's not a possession. It's an invitation. And I think, whatever it is, I saw it that day at the yard sale. And it saw me too. It started with a simple sign, white cardboard, red paint, the letters uneven like they'd been slapped on in a rush but still readable. Yard sale. Sat sun 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. A crooked red arrow pointed east, toward the rising sun that made everything look golden and drowsy, dust dancing in the morning light. It was one of those crisp, late October Saturdays. Tom and I had just dropped off the recycling in Echo Valley, a quiet cluster of older neighborhoods nestled right up against the Santa Ela foothills. It was a place with personality. No cookie-cutter homes here. Every house told a story. Some still clung to life with fresh paint and desert rock gardens. Others sagged into the ground like they'd given up years ago. Tom and I were in our mid-30s, no kids, just each other, and a shared obsession with rummaging through strangers' pasts. Estate sales, garage sales, moving cleanouts. We didn't discriminate. It was our version of a treasure hunt. You'd be amazed at the things people let go of. Little glimpses into lives we'd never live. Memories sold off for a few dollars. Tom was driving, sipping cold brew from a repurposed mason jar, his elbow resting lazily on the door. He glanced over as we passed the sign. "Want to follow it?" he asked, nodding in its direction. I shifted the canvas tote on my lap, already half filled with the morning's finds. "Yeah," I said. "Why not? Still early." We turned off the main road, climbing into the hills where the houses grew older, more peculiar. Silver Pines, that was the name. A tiny neighborhood clinging to the edge of relevance, mostly retirees and the kind of folks who didn't want to be found. Half the homes still had bits of Christmas tinsel hanging from their gutters, like no one had bothered to take them down. Others had warped plywood boards over the windows, warning signs nailed crookedly to the doors. As we crept along the road, we passed a yard with 3 rusting cars half swallowed by weeds, a decaying RV, and then, unexpectedly, a house with a bright yellow front door, fresh paint. cheerful, almost absurdly so against the backdrop of neglect. That's where the next sign pointed. Yard sale. 27 Silver Pines Road. Tom slowed down and pulled to the curb. The house was modest, a faded one-story with pale blue siding and cracked concrete steps. The mailbox was crooked, leaning out toward the street like it was trying to escape. A few folding tables were scattered across the patchy lawn, framed by tall, whispering oaks. The leaves hadn't fully turned yet, but you could smell change in the air, earth, brittle foliage, and something metallic. Old tools, maybe, or rusted nails. There was no music playing, no voices or laughter, just the soft flap of a tablecloth in the breeze and the occasional groan of a branch overhead. It felt off, like stepping into a photograph that hadn't been taken yet. But we got out anyway. We always did. I moved fast at sales. Years of practice had taught me to skim for hidden gems before the crowd caught up. I liked the corners, where linens and kitchenware ended up, where no one else bothered to look. Tom lingered more, especially if there were books or old tools. But today I didn't make it to the corners. Something pulled me instead toward the side yard, where a row of tables sat under a crooked poplar tree. Its limbs arched overhead like gnarled arms, casting patchy shade on the grass. I stepped closer. 4 long tables, each one covered in Christmas decorations. Not the plastic, mass-produced stuff you find at department stores, but older, vintage, carefully made. A little eerie in the right light. Some were hand-painted, others glittered in a muted, antique kind of way. These weren't decorations, they were artifacts. The first table held wall hangings, embroidered felt banners with old-fashioned carolers, carved wooden plaques with gold script, and a strange Noel sign that doubled as a candelabra. The second table was packed edge to edge with ornaments, hundreds, glass, tin, ceramic, some no bigger than a marble. I leaned in, drawn to a tiny glass bell shaped like an angel. Its wings were curled inward, like hands clasped in prayer. I reached for it, but something made me pause. The third table caught my eye. Flat decorations this time. Centerpieces, miniature village houses, reindeer with ribbon collars faded to dusty rose. And there in the center, a Santa figurine. Not red and jolly, but chromed over in silvery frost, slender and tall, about 10 inches high. One hand held a sack, the other a lantern. Every inch of him was detailed, sculpted with uncanny precision. He was shaking, not swaying from wind, not vibrating like something electronic. Shaking, gently, steadily, like he was being rocked by hands that weren't there. I stopped cold. Nothing else on the table moved, not the delicate snow globes, not the porcelain deer, not even the strands of tinsel that hung like cobwebs in the corners. The breeze had died. The leaves were still. Everything felt frozen. I turned my head, suddenly aware of the silence. The side yard was empty. No seller, no shoppers. I couldn't even hear Tom anymore, just the soft creak of the poplar above me, like a breath held too long. I leaned closer, squinting at the base of the Santa. There were no wires, no cords, no batteries. He wasn't plugged into anything. But still, he shook. It wasn't on a moving platform. No motor, no string, no breeze. Nothing around it could have made it move like that. I blinked, unsettled, and took a step back. That's when I heard her. "Oh, isn't he beautiful?" a woman said softly behind me. I turned. She stood just a few feet away, as if she'd been there the whole time. Maybe late 70s, wearing a pale cardigan over a collared blouse, dark slacks, gray hair tied neatly back. Her face had a gentle, lived-in warmth, lined but kind, the kind of face you instinctively trusted. She was smiling, her eyes fixed on the silver Santa. "It's been years since I saw him dance like that," she said, voice low and touched with awe. Her eyes shimmered. "Dance?" I echoed, trying to keep my voice steady. Is it motorized?" She chuckled, a quiet, fond sound. No, Just full of spirit, I suppose. Then she turned toward me fully, her expression softening even more as if noticing me for the first time. "He was my husband's favorite," she said. "Every year he'd put him up on the mantel. Said it looked like Santa was trying to guide him home." There was such affection in her voice, such ease and certainty, that I didn't question it. I didn't want to break the spell. I nodded gently. "He's beautiful," I said. She smiled and reached out, brushing her fingers across one of the nearby ornaments, a small ceramic angel. Her hands were thin and knotted with age, but her nails were tidy, well cared for. "We had so many of these," she said quietly. "Spent our whole lives collecting. Never had children, so I suppose. They're all orphans now." I hesitated, then said softly, "I'm sure someone will take good care of them." She smiled at that, eyes misty. "That's what I hope." Just then, a breeze stirred through the yard. The corners of the tablecloths lifted gently. The silver Santa stopped moving. I turned my head, glancing out toward the tree-lined street. Leaves rustled. A dog barked faintly in the distance. I looked back toward her. She was gone. No footsteps, no sound, just gone. I blinked, stepping around the table to scan the yard. Maybe she'd moved to another table, or gone inside. But the side yard was empty again, eerily so. The quiet returned like a held breath released. No voices, no chatter. Just the creak of tree limbs and the sound of my own pulse. I walked around to the front of the house, still a little off balance. Tom was by the steps, flipping through a milk crate of vinyl records. "Hey," I said, trying to sound casual. "Did you see an older lady walk past? Gray hair, cardigan kinda short?" He looked up, brows pinched. "Nope, just us and the guy inside." I turned toward the house. The front door was open. A young woman, maybe late 20s, sat behind a folding table taking payments. Her nails were chipped from paint, her hair pulled into a lazy ponytail. I approached. "Hi, quick question," I began. "Was there an older woman out here earlier? Gray hair, soft voice, wearing a cardigan?" She tilted her head, confused. "Not that I've seen, it's just been you two since we opened up." My stomach turned slightly. We were just in the side yard. I talked to her. She said the Santa figurine was her husband's favorite. The girl paused, frowning slightly. Then she leaned down and pulled a small photo from a shoebox beside her. It was faded, edges curled with time. "Was it her?" she asked, holding it out to me. It was a photo of the same woman, standing in a living room next to the silver Santa, same cardigan, same warm expression. I felt my breath catch. "Yeah, that's her." The girl exhaled, her expression softening with something like sorrow. "That's my aunt. She passed away 2 months ago. This was her house." Tom and I didn't stay much longer after that. We bought one ornament, a small wooden sleigh with tiny, delicate metal runners. I asked again before we left if anyone else had seen the woman. No one had. We walked back to the car in silence. When we got in, I gripped the ornament gently in my lap. "She was right there, Tom," I said quietly. I talked to her. She touched the ornaments. He didn't say I was imagining it. Didn't try to rationalize it. He just nodded, looking straight ahead. "I believe you." I turned for one last look at the house. The sunlight had shifted, grown brighter, almost too bright, casting sharp shadows across the tables. But the silver Santa in the center of the third table shimmered again, just slightly, like something alive under the light. We still go to yard sales most weekends, still wander through driveways and lawns, flipping through relics of strangers' lives. But now and then, when the wind hushes and the air holds that uncanny stillness, I find myself glancing over my shoulder. And sometimes, just sometimes, when a silver glint catches my eye or I hear a faint distant chuckle on the breeze, I wonder if she's still there, still watching, still hoping someone will love what she left behind. Still coming home for Christmas. I grew up in the kind of neighborhoods where folks left their front doors unlocked and waved to each other from their porches, where you knew not just your next-door neighbors, but the names of their kids too. Summer meant cul-de-sac barbecues with paper plates balanced on laps and the smell of charcoal drifting through the air. It was the kind of place where no one thought twice about borrowing a hedge trimmer or a cup of sugar. So when my wife, Emily, and I bought our first house, a modest 3-bedroom tucked into a quiet corner of Ridgeville, Ohio, it felt like coming full circle. Familiar, safe, like we were carrying on the rhythm of something good. The neighborhood had wide streets, houses spaced out just enough for privacy but not so much that you felt isolated. Each yard had about half an acre, plenty of room for gardens, dogs, or kids with soccer balls. The neighbors were warm, always offering a quick wave or a "hey there" when you were dragging the bins out. We moved in 3 years ago, and I can honestly say it felt like home from day one. The garage, oddly enough, had been one of my favorite features. It was attached to the house, big enough for all my tools, a solid workbench, my old mountain bike, and even a second fridge stocked with drinks and whatever groceries didn't fit in the kitchen. I'd spent weekends out there organizing things just the way I liked them. It wasn't spotless, never has been, but I always knew where everything was. That'll matter later. Summers around here come with a casual tradition: yard sales. Nothing official, no HOA signs or online bulletins, just some neon posters tacked to telephone poles, a few folding tables in the driveway, and neighbors trying to make a little room in their garages. Emily and I held one the summer after we moved in. Got rid of an old lamp, a coffee maker that only brewed half a pot, and some mismatched dishes. It wasn't a huge success, but it had that neighborhood charm. Since then, we haven't hosted another, though we do like to wander through them when we see signs. Mostly it's about the walk. Sometimes we'll grab a paperback or a used shovel for the garden if it's in decent shape. Everything strange started late last July. It was a Friday, sometime after lunch. Emily and I were just pulling back into the neighborhood when we spotted a few neon green signs posted up by the entrance. Bold, black Sharpie letters: Yard Sale, 229 Maple Hill. That was just 6 houses down from ours. The guy who lived there, Tom Bennett, was someone I'd always liked. Not a best friend or anything, but solid. The kind of guy who knows how to fix a leaky faucet without Googling it. Retired military, Air Force I think, early 50s, kept his yard immaculate, helped me bleed the brakes on my Civic once. Afterward, we sat on my back deck with a couple of beers, talking about nothing. His wife, Karen, was friendly too. Came to one of Emily's book club meetings, brought some kind of blueberry coffee cake that everyone raved about. So when we saw their address on the sign, Emily gave me a little nudge with her elbow. "You want to check it out? I still haven't replaced that busted rake." I shrugged, not needing much convincing. "Sure. Let's see what kind of junk Tom's unloading." The day was hot, thick air clinging to your skin the second you stepped outside. The sun was so bright it made the pavement shimmer, and everything smelled like dry mulch and fresh-cut grass. We strolled over, and by the time we got there, a few other neighbors were already browsing. Tom had laid everything out neatly, typical of him. Camping gear, old power tools, bins of DVDs and mystery novels, a dusty toaster oven, mismatched glassware, all organized in rows, clearly labeled with masking tape and marker. While Emily chatted with Karen by a table of garden tools, I wandered toward the garage where the bigger items were spread out. That's when I saw it. A red and black Husky tool set, socket wrenches, hex keys, ratchets, all snug in their molded plastic slots. The hard shell case with the folding handle. It looked exactly like mine. Not just similar, identical. Same wear marks on the corners, same faded scrape on the bottom left edge, like it had been dropped on concrete. But what made my stomach clench wasn't any of that. It was the sticker. A dumb old cartoon decal I'd slapped on years ago. A duck wearing sunglasses, holding a hammer, with the caption, "Nailed it. I froze, just stared at it, like my brain was stuttering. Because that sticker? That was mine. I remember peeling it from a vending machine in college. I'd stuck it on the case right after buying the set. My first big tool purchase. There was no mistaking it. That was my toolkit. That sticker. I'd put it there years ago, as a joke, slapped right on the underside of the case. I froze for a second, then bent down slowly, hands a little shaky, and picked it up, flipped it over, and there it was. That same ridiculous duck in sunglasses holding a hammer and grinning like an idiot. Nailed it. Same exact spot, same faded edges. I hadn't used that set in maybe a month or two, but I knew it was mine. Not, I had one like this. No, this was mine. I set the case down carefully. I didn't say anything, not yet. I just kept browsing, trying to act like I wasn't coming apart inside. A few steps later, I spotted a digital tire inflator. Same model as mine. Same small scuff near the nozzle. Same wear around the buttons. My chest tightened. Then I saw the old yellow shop light I'd kept hanging behind my workbench. Black rubber handle. Burn mark halfway down the cord from that time it accidentally touched a hot pipe. I swallowed, hard. My mouth had gone dry. Emily was still chatting with Karen near a table covered in old picture frames. I walked over, forced to smile like I wasn't panicking inside. "Hey, Tom. Big sale?" Tom laughed easily, wiping his hands on a rag. "Yeah, just clearing out the garage a bit. Karen says if I bring home one more tool, she's moving me out there with him." I nodded, trying to keep my face neutral, though every inch of my skin was crawling. "Some good stuff here." He smiled. "Take anything you want. I'll cut you a deal." Emily leaned toward me and whispered, "We'll come back tomorrow. I want to check what frames I need for the hallway." We walked back in silence, the sun suddenly feeling hotter, the air thicker. As soon as we were far enough from earshot, I said, low and fast, "That tool set? That was mine." Emily gave me a confused look. "What?" "No, it couldn't. I'm serious. It had the sticker on the bottom. That dumb duck one I put on it like 4 years ago. You remember that, right?" She blinked. "Adam, you think Tom stole it? Why would he do that?" "I don't know why, but that wasn't a copy. That was mine. Same sticker, same marks." We got home, and I didn't wait. I went straight to the garage, opened the side door, and started scanning the shelves, the bench, the walls. My heart dropped. The tool set was gone. So was the tire inflator, the shop light. I turned around. "Emily!" She stepped into the garage, arms folded, eyes watching me. "Right there," I pointed, crouching near the workbench. "That's where it was, right there." She frowned. "Are you sure?" I didn't answer. I was already moving again, pulling open drawers, checking bins. The voltmeter? Gone. The old circular saw I hadn't used in a year? Gone. The spare drill I kept for backup? Also gone. Emily said gently, "Maybe you moved them? Or maybe loaned them out?" "I haven't loaned anything out since February," I snapped. "When Chris borrowed my ladder. That's it. And I haven't touched this stuff in weeks, so..." That night, I didn't sleep. I tossed and turned, brain spinning in loops. Every time I closed my eyes, I pictured Tom standing in my garage, sorting through my tools like he owned them. Could he really have done it? Just slipped in while we slept? The side door had been unlocked more than once. The back gate barely ever latched. The garage had no cameras. He'd been in there before, once to help me bleed the brakes, another time during a barbecue. He knew the layout. The next morning, around 10, I walked back over. Alone. Emily stayed behind. I didn't bother browsing this time. I walked straight to the tool set. It was still there. Tag read $75. I'd paid $200 for it brand new. Tom was stacking some books into a bin nearby. He looked up. "Back for the tools?" I nodded slowly. Yeah, about that set. Funny thing, it looks exactly like mine. Same sticker and everything. He paused mid-stack, looked at me for a moment too long. Huh? Weird. Got that as a gift from my cousin. Last year, I think. You sure? I asked, watching his face. Because that sticker's kind of specific. He shrugged, too casually. Yeah, I didn't put it there. Maybe it came like that. Who knows? My hands clenched without me realizing. Tom, that's my set. You took it. His expression dropped. Smile gone. Excuse me? I know it's mine. I'm not guessing. You were in my garage. His jaw tightened. His voice went flat. You need to leave, Adam. Not until I take my stuff back. You want to buy it? He snapped, pointing at the tag. It's $75. Otherwise, get off my driveway. I stood there a second, stunned. I should have grabbed it and walked. I should have. But I didn't. I turned and left. Back home, I sat in the garage, just staring at the empty spots where my things used to be. I kept seeing it, him slipping through the fence, easing open the side door in the dark, grabbing something and walking back. Maybe he came more than once. Maybe he stood right where I was sitting now, deciding what he'd take next, and then sold it back to me. I didn't go to the police. I didn't have real proof. Just a sticker. Just a feeling. He'd already denied everything. What could I say? That I knew it was mine? But I changed the locks, installed motion lights. I started locking the side door, even in the daytime. And I haven't spoken to Tom since. That yard sale, it changed how I see this place. I used to think we lived in a community, a neighborhood where people looked out for each other. Now, I keep a baseball bat behind the garage door, just in case. I was 8 years old the summer it happened. Back then, Saturdays had a rhythm. They meant one thing: yard sales. We lived in a small Oregon town, the kind of place where every third house had a swing set in the backyard, and neighbors waved even if they didn't know your name. It felt safe, familiar. My mom wasn't rich, but she was resourceful. She had a talent for stretching a dollar and a sharp eye for a deal. Estate sales, church rummage events, someone's weekend purge. That was her thing. And I loved tagging along, mostly for the toys. That summer stuck with me. It was the first one after my dad left. He didn't say much before he packed a few suitcases and drove off, and after that, the house felt different. Quieter, but not in a peaceful way. Tense, like everyone was trying not to make a sound that might break something else. My mom never talked much about the divorce, but it hung around her. She moved slower, laughed less. Some mornings I'd see her sitting in the kitchen with her coffee, just staring at the wall like she forgot she had to be somewhere. I think that's why she started dragging me and my little brother Matthew out of the house every weekend. It gave us something to do, gave her somewhere to point her energy. She needed it as much as we did. One Saturday, we hit 3 or 4 sales early. They all blurred together, folding tables with chipped mugs, sagging cardboard boxes labeled MISC, plastic crates full of tangled cords. Then we pulled up to the last one, a corner house with a wide sun-splashed driveway crowded with stuff. Baby clothes, lawn chairs, stacks of old books, tools. There were balloons tied to the mailbox, and hand-drawn signs taped to telephone poles that pointed the way like breadcrumbs. It felt more like a neighborhood event than a typical sale. "Stay close," Mom said as she unbuckled Matthew from his car seat. She sounded tired already. "I'm not chasing either of you today." "I'll look at the toys," I said quickly, already eyeing a folding table near the garage. It was loaded with clear plastic bins, and the sun made the contents inside gleam like treasure. Matthew started fussing about being thirsty, asking for juice in that half-whiny voice he used when he was still waking up. Mom reached into her purse, trying to soothe him with a granola bar, and I took the moment to slip away, drifting toward the toy table like a magnet, I was old enough to stay within sight, and I liked the feeling of being on my own, even if just a little. There was something exciting about picking through other people's things. It felt like discovering secrets. I crouched by one of the bins, digging into a pile of dusty action figures. Some were sticky with age, which was kind of gross, but also weirdly cool. It was like they had stories. Next to that was a cardboard box labeled Games, $1. Inside were old DS and Wii cases, most with worn edges or missing manuals. I started flipping through them, checking the titles, wondering if any still worked. Then I heard a voice behind me. "Find anything good?" I turned around quickly. A woman stood there, probably late 30s. Her hair was a light brown and pulled into a loose, messy bun. She had sunglasses perched on top of her head and a plastic iced coffee cup in one hand, the kind with condensation sliding down the sides. Her shirt had glittery letters across the front that read, "Mom Life." She looked like someone's mom. Familiar, harmless. I figured she was running the sale. "I'm looking at the games," I said, glancing back at the box. She nodded. "Oh, those are fun. My son used to play those all the time." Her voice was casual, friendly. "You know, there's a free box at the end of the driveway. You can pick something out if you want." My ears perked up. Free boxes were the best part. Most of the time they were just filled with junk, cracked flower pots, tangled Christmas lights, ancient VHS tapes, but every once in a while you'd find something really cool. A Happy Meal toy from a set you almost finished. A busted RC car you could maybe fix. A small, strange figurine that made you wonder who used to own it. I turned to look down the driveway. Sure enough, sitting near the sidewalk was a clear tote with no lid. It looked half full. "Really?" I asked, my voice a little too hopeful. She smiled again and stepped aside with a little nod. "Sure, go ahead. You can take one thing." I didn't hesitate. I walked beside her, rambling about a DS game I'd seen back at the other table. She nodded along, sipping her iced coffee, and gave these little hums of agreement like she was actually listening. At the time, nothing about it felt strange. Adults at yard sales were usually friendly, especially to kids. They'd smile, ask what you were into, maybe give you a deal if you looked excited enough. We reached the bin at the end of the driveway, and I crouched beside it. It was better than most free boxes I'd seen. A couple of half-complete board games, a floppy old Scooby-Doo plush, a cracked fidget spinner. I rooted around, fingers brushing over plastic and fabric, until I found a Hot Wheels car that looked nearly new, shiny red with black stripes. "I like this one," I said, holding it up for her to see. She bent down a bit, resting her hands on her knees like teachers do when they talk to younger kids. "Good choice," she said with a warm smile. Then, almost too casually, she added, "Okay, let's bring it to the car." I blinked. "To the car?" "Yeah, just drop it in there. I'll hold on to it for you," she said, standing upright again. She pointed toward a silver SUV parked a little down the street. "My car's right over there." The engine was already running. I remember that detail so clearly. None of the other cars on the street were on. Most people were parked or unloading or sitting in folding chairs. But this car, it was ready to go. Still, I was 8. I didn't question it. I figured maybe she meant she didn't want me to forget it, or that she'd keep it safe while I finished looking. Adults did stuff like that sometimes. I started walking, Hot Wheels clutched in my hand. She reached out for my other hand. Her fingers wrapped around mine. Not tight, but definite. And I didn't pull away right away. It felt automatic, like when a teacher grabs your hand during a fire drill, like, "This is fine, right?" But it wasn't. It didn't feel right. That's when I felt it. Not heard, felt. A sudden hot prickle up the back of my neck. That deep sinking sensation that something's wrong before your brain even knows why. "Isabel." My mom's voice, sharp, alarmed, almost panicked. I froze. The woman let go instantly. Her face didn't change much, just a flicker, something unreadable. She turned, stiff and fast, and walked directly toward the silver SUV. That's when I noticed the man in the driver's seat. I hadn't seen him before. I don't know how I missed him. She climbed in without looking back. The SUV pulled away like it had been waiting for that exact moment. I just stood there in the middle of the street, the Hot Wheel still in my hand, watching it disappear. Then my mom was there, grabbing me by the shoulders, her face pale, eyes wide. "What the hell were you doing?" she said, breathless. Her voice shook with something I'd never heard before. Fear. Who was that woman? I was confused, trying to piece it together. I thought she worked here," I said, glancing back toward the driveway. Another woman, older, short gray hair, floral blouse, was already walking toward us. She looked shaken, too. "She didn't belong here," the older woman said to my mom. "I saw her talking to your daughter, and something just felt off. That's why I yelled." My mom knelt down in front of me, gripping my arms. "Did she touch you? Did she say anything else?" I nodded and told her everything. How the woman had offered me something from the free box, pointed to her car, said she'd hold the toy for me. How she held my hand, the SUV, the engine already running. My mom listened, but her hands trembled. I didn't understand why she was so shaken. Not really, not then. But the look on her face scared me more than the woman had. That night my mom called the police. We gave them every detail we could remember. They took notes, asked questions, even circled the neighborhood in their cruiser. But nothing came of it. We never found out who she was. She wasn't a neighbor, she wasn't part of the sale. After that, things changed. For weeks, my mom didn't let me out of her sight. No more walking ahead at yard sales. No more solo exploring while she bargained over flower pots and picture frames. I had to stand right next to her, hand on the stroller, or not come at all. I didn't grasp the full weight of what happened until much later. It hit me about a year later. I was watching the news with my mom when they aired a story about a girl who'd gone missing. Same town, same age. Picked up at a yard sale by someone pretending to be a seller. My stomach turned. My skin went cold. That could have been me. Now I'm 23. I still think about that day more than I'd like to admit. It replays in my mind sometimes. Her calm, easy smile. The way she bent down and talked to me like she was just being kind. I even remember the name written in black marker on her coffee cup, Lisa. Her sunglasses, her glittery shirt. She looked so normal, so ordinary. And that's the part that scares me the most. I've told the story to friends, shared it once on a local safety forum. People always react the same. "Good thing your mom saw you." Or, "Thank God for that other woman." And yeah, they're right. I was lucky. But sometimes I lie awake and think, if she'd been a little more patient, a little quieter, a little less eager, if my mom had looked away for 30 more seconds, my story would have ended very differently. And that's what stays with me. Because monsters don't always look like monsters. Sometimes they wear glittery shirts, carry iced coffees, and offer you something for free. For years, Emma and Jacob had talked about getting out of their cramped apartment in the city. The peeling paint, the constant noise, the way the walls seemed to close in a little more each day. They wanted space. A yard, a street where kids rode bikes and neighbors waved from porches. So when they stumbled across the listing for the modest 2-story house on Maplewood Lane, tucked just outside Crestview, it felt like fate. The price was within reach, the neighborhood quiet, the yard dotted with trees that turned gold in autumn. It wasn't perfect. The kitchen linoleum was cracked, and one of the upstairs windows stuck, but it was theirs. For the first time in years, it felt like they could breathe. The move-in weeks were a blur. Boxes piled high in the corners, paint swatches taped to the walls, the scent of fresh lumber and cleaning products in the air. Emma, a freelance graphic designer, fell in love with the morning light that poured into the living room, golden and soft, perfect for her workspace. Jacob, who worked in IT and unwound by restoring old bikes, immediately claimed the garage. He spent evenings there organizing his tools, rolling his 1978 Honda onto the stand, humming along to classic rock. But with a new house came new realities. The clutter they dragged from the apartment didn't quite fit the cleaner, more open space. Gadgets they hadn't touched in years, clothes that hadn't seen daylight in a decade, mismatched furniture, half-assembled shelves. Every closet felt overstuffed. One Thursday evening, Emma looked up from her laptop. "What if we did a yard sale?" Jacob raised an eyebrow. "Seriously? Who even does those anymore?" "Everyone around here, apparently." She spun her screen to show him a neighborhood forum filled with posts, community cleanouts, garage sales, weekend markets. "It could clear some space and maybe we make a little cash." Jacob leaned back in his chair, skeptical. "Or we sit outside all weekend and end up lugging everything back in." Emma smirked and nudged his foot with hers. "We'll meet people, see the neighborhood. Worst case, we donate what's left." That Saturday, they woke before dawn to a chill in the air and dew clinging to the grass. Emma wrapped herself in a hoodie, while Jacob dragged folding tables from the garage. They set them up along the driveway, transforming the garage into something like a pop-up thrift shop. Cardboard boxes brimmed with kitchenware, old tech, paperbacks, children's books, and piles of gently worn clothes. Emma draped a bright blue tarp overhead to block the mid-morning sun. She checked the hand-drawn yard sale signs they'd taped to street poles the night before. "Hope this works," she murmured. Jacob hit the button to raise the garage door. It rattled up, revealing the shelves of old tools, a stack of board games, and a narrow walkway to the back entrance of the house. He glanced at her. "Let's make this fun, yeah?" She nodded, already picturing a bustling driveway filled with chatty locals. By late morning, cars started slowing. Curious neighbors strolled up, coffee cups in hand. Emma greeted them with easy smiles, watching as they picked through relics of their old life: vintage lamps, a lava lamp, a barely used crockpot. Children darted between tables, clutching action figures and stuffed animals. An older couple haggled over a toaster. Jacob handled the cash box, counting change with the precision of someone used to spreadsheets. Emma moved among the tables, laughing, chatting, giving away things to wide-eyed kids. For a while, it felt good, grounding. But around mid-afternoon, Emma noticed someone standing just beyond the tables. A man, tall, lean, hoodie drawn up despite the sun, hands stuffed deep in his jeans pockets. He didn't browse, didn't approach, just stood there, eyes hidden in the shadow of his hood. She approached lightly. "Hi there. Looking for anything in particular?" He lifted his head just enough to flash a faint smile. "Just looking, thanks." Something about him made her skin prickle. Not fear, exactly. Just off. She forced a polite nod and moved away, but kept him in the corner of her vision. He lingered, browsing without browsing. As the sun dipped low, the crowds thinned. Around 6, the last few browsers wandered off. Emma and Jacob began packing the unsold items back into boxes. When Emma looked up, the man was still there, now leaning against the chain-link fence 3 houses down, watching them. She whispered, "He's still there." Jacob looked. Weird. Maybe just wait him out. They kept boxing things in silence, but the unease lingered. When they turned back to the street minutes later, he was gone. Emma exhaled, a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "Let's just lock up." They shut the front door, clicked the deadbolt, and pulled the garage halfway down, just enough to discourage anyone from entering. In the bustle, neither of them remembered the slim door connecting the garage to the kitchen. They never locked it. It was inside. Safe. Later that night, curled together on the couch with a movie playing low, the house felt still, warm, settled, until a soft creak broke through the hum of the TV. Emma sat upright. "Did you hear that?" Jacob was already on his feet, heart hammering. The kitchen door, the one they never locked, the one that connected to the garage. They moved slowly, bare feet soundless on the hardwood. From the hallway, Emma caught it, a shadow shifting past the frosted kitchen window. She grabbed Jacob's hand, her voice a whisper. Someone's inside. A jolt of adrenaline surged through both of them. That man, had slipped in through the garage. He was in the house. They didn't speak. Just back down the hall, locking themselves in the bedroom, Emma's hands trembling as she dialed 911. Her voice cracked as she whispered into the phone. Someone broke into our house. He's still here. Emma's hands trembled as she gripped the phone tighter, her voice low and urgent. Yes, we're locked in the bedroom. I think someone's inside the house. Please hurry. Jacob paced in a tight circle, every creak of the wooden floor making his breath catch. The old house, which once felt charming, now felt sinister, foreign, unpredictable. I can't believe this is happening, he muttered. We had a yard sale today, that's it. How the hell did he even get in? Emma's throat felt tight. The garage, she whispered, guilt knotting in her stomach. We pulled the door down, but we didn't lock the one into the house. I thought it was safe. We always treat that door like it's inside. Jacob interrupted, still pacing. He stopped, realization dawning. We never lock it. Not really. It's practically part of the kitchen. Silence fell between them. Every noise in the house felt amplified. Emma pressed her back to the bedroom door, trying to steady her breathing. A faint creak came from the hallway. Measured footsteps, slow, unhurried. Her voice cracked as she whispered, Do you think he knows we're in here? Jacob shook his head, jaw clenched. I don't know. Maybe not. Or maybe he's waiting. Emma's breath hitched in her throat. She tried to push the thought away, but it clung to her like a second skin. The dispatcher said 5 minutes. We just need to stay put. Jacob checked his phone. 3 minutes left. Time felt stretched, thick and suffocating. The hum of a distant car, the occasional creak of floorboards, the slight rustle beyond the bedroom door, it all pressed down on them. Emma's mind ran wild. What if he had a weapon? Was he just looking to rob them? Or something worse? Jacob finally sat down on the edge of the bed, elbows on knees, hands running through his hair. Why would someone just hide in our garage all day? His voice was hollow, numb. Emma blinked, trying to replay the day in her head. The guy by the fence after the sale, he never left. Maybe he was waiting for everyone to go. Thought the house would be empty. Jacob nodded slowly. Yeah, that makes sense. Waited for the right moment. Then a loud, sharp thump sounded from below, the floor beneath them. Emma flinched and grabbed Jacob's arm. What was that? Jacob's face drained of color. The basement, he said quietly. He's down there. Carefully, he crossed the room and parted the curtains just an inch. The street's quiet, he murmured. No lights, no sirens yet. Emma checked the lock on the bedroom side door. Back door secure. He must have come in through the garage and gone straight to the basement, Jacob said, putting the pieces together. He's still down there. Emma's phone buzzed. She grabbed it. A message from 911 dispatch. Units arriving. Stay inside. Keep the door locked. Relief surged through her in a rush, though it did little to calm her heartbeat. They weren't alone. Help was on the way. But then, footsteps again. This time closer, upstairs, just outside their room. Emma darted to the nightstand and pulled out the wooden baseball bat they kept there. Her hands shook, but she gripped it tight. Jacob grabbed the heavy flashlight from his desk drawer. They stood frozen shoulder to shoulder, staring at the doorknob. It rattled. Slowly, deliberately. Jacob's voice was a whisper. Stay calm. The knob turned slightly, then stopped. A man's voice, low and uncertain, came through the door. I don't want to hurt you. Emma's throat was dry. Who are you? She called out, her voice cracking. Why are you in our house? Silence. Then, the knob stilled, and the footsteps began retreating down the hall. A few seconds later, the distant wail of sirens pierced the silence. Red and blue lights flashed against the walls. Jacob rushed to the door and cracked it open. "They're here." Emma's knees nearly gave out as they stepped into the hallway. Officers flooded the entry, weapons drawn, voices calm and direct. Emma pointed toward the basement door, her mouth dry. "He's down there." Within moments, one of the officers, Ramirez, called out, "Got him!" The man was crouched behind dusty storage boxes in the basement. He looked pale, sweaty, his hoodie damp and stained. His eyes flicked nervously between the officers. "Why'd you break in?" Ramirez demanded, snapping cuffs on his wrists. The man's voice was hoarse. I was cold. I didn't mean to scare anyone, just needed a place to stay." Emma and Jacob stood at the top of the basement stairs, stunned. The next day, the news rippled through the neighborhood. Concerned neighbors knocked on their door offering condolences and cookies. Emma stood on the porch with Mrs. Henderson, trying to explain. "We never thought something like this would happen here," Emma said softly. Mrs. Henderson patted her arm. "People can hide in plain sight. That's the scariest part." Jacob was already on the phone with a locksmith, requesting new deadbolts, garage upgrades, a full alarm system. "No more chances," he said firmly. Emma nodded. "I used to feel safe here. Now I don't know." Jacob wrapped his arms around her. "We'll get through it. Together." That night, Emma lay awake, staring at the door to the garage. Once just another part of their home, it now loomed in her mind as a point of failure, a reminder that safety is never guaranteed. But one thing was certain: they wouldn't make that mistake again. Claire Benson's Saturday had begun like any other on the quiet outskirts of Willow Creek, a sleepy town tucked between gently rolling fields and thick, whispering woods. It had been 3 years since she traded the drone of city sirens for this rural calm. The Benson family farm stretched over 5 acres, flanked by tangled forest and a handful of distant neighbors who kept to themselves. That was what Claire loved most. The quiet. The kind of silence that felt like a warm blanket after too many years of noise. But today, something chipped at that stillness. Driving home from the market, the usual rattle of gravel under her tires gave way to a flicker of color in her peripheral vision. She slowed. A wooden sign, weather-beaten and slanted, jutted from the roadside. Hand-painted red letters read, "Yard sale. This way." She raised an eyebrow. "Yard sale?" she muttered, amused by the misspelling. Out here, sales like this were rare. Folks in Willow Creek preferred Facebook swaps or quiet trades through word of mouth. She hadn't seen one in, a year? 2? Curiosity stirred. She hesitated, then turned onto the narrow road the sign indicated. Pines loomed on either side, their branches clawing at the pale sky as the pavement cracked beneath her tires. Her phone buzzed on the passenger seat, but she let it go. Her focus was on the winding road. "Maybe I'll find something weird and wonderful," she said aloud, smiling faintly to herself. The road dead-ended after barely a mile. Only 3 houses were spaced along the final stretch, each separated by thick hedges and trees. The second-to-last house stood out, not because of its size or beauty, but because of its wear. A sagging single-story cottage with white paint peeling off in curling strips. The porch leaned like it had given up years ago. The lawn was wild, scattered with waist-high grass and errant patches of wildflowers. Claire pulled over and parked by the uneven curb. No other cars. That struck her as odd. Grabbing her tote bag, she stepped out. Gravel crunched under her boots, the sound jarringly loud against the hush of the afternoon. A breeze slipped through the pines, cool and damp, carrying the earthy scent of moss and distant rain. She followed the narrow driveway along the side of the house. At the far edge of the yard, just before the forest's shadow, a scattering of items had been laid out. She slowed, taking it in. Frayed lampshades, mismatched chairs, boxes of yellowed paperbacks, chipped figurines, picture frames with warped glass. Claire called out, voice tentative. "Hello? Anyone here?" Silence. Only a distant bird call answered, sharp and lonely. Leaves rustled above her, brushing together like dry paper. She stepped closer, scanning the items. Most looked like junk, things someone wanted gone more than sold. But a painting caught her eye. A foggy riverside, muted in tone, the brushstrokes rough and strangely intimate. Something about it pulled at her. She leaned down to pick it up. Snap. The soft crack of a branch breaking behind her made her freeze. She straightened slowly. The sound could have been an animal, a squirrel, a deer. But then came a low murmur, barely audible, like someone talking through cupped hands from far away. Claire turned, squinting into the dense trees. Movement. Just there, between the trunks. A figure, tall, still, almost camouflaged in the shadows. Her throat tightened. "Hello?" She tried again, louder this time. The figure stepped forward slightly into the fading light. A man. Late 40s, maybe older. His face was gaunt, stretched thin, and his eyes, sunken, wide, unblinking, locked onto her like she was something under glass. Her skin crawled. He didn't speak, didn't nod, didn't blink. He just watched her. Claire forced a nervous laugh and gestured at the items. "Just browsing the sale," she said, voice too light. "Is this your place?" Nothing. The man took a slow, deliberate step forward. Claire instinctively backed up. She glanced toward her car, heart beginning to thud against her ribs. The house felt suddenly too far away, the road too quiet. I think I'll head back now," she said, trying to keep her tone neutral, calm. She turned and began walking. Not running. Not yet. Footsteps followed. Measured. Soft. Her pace quickened. "Don't panic," she told herself. "Maybe he's confused. Maybe he's just some guy who doesn't talk much." Still, her brain reeled. What was he doing in the woods? Why hadn't he said anything? Was he drunk? Dangerous? At the end of the driveway, she stopped short and turned to face him. He was still coming. Eyes locked on her. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice more defensive now. "Do you need help?" The man's lips parted slightly as if he might respond, but no sound came. Just that eerie stare. Then another step. Something primal sparked in her. Claire spun and bolted for the car. She fumbled her keys, dropped them, cursed, snatched them up. Her hands were shaking. She unlocked the door, threw herself inside, and slammed the lock button, engine on. She didn't look back. From the safety of her car, Claire glanced through the rearview mirror and saw him, standing motionless at the edge of the street just beyond the long shadow of the pines. The man hadn't moved, but his eyes followed her with eerie stillness. She didn't wait to see what he might do next. Shoving the car into reverse, she backed out fast and drove off, heart pounding against her ribcage like it was trying to break free. Every flickering shadow on the road seemed to twist and stretch as if someone, was just out of sight. Later that night, curled up on the couch with a blanket across her knees and her phone glowing softly in her hands, Claire aimlessly scrolled through local news. Her mind still buzzed with unease she couldn't shake. Then she saw it, and her breath caught in her throat. Man arrested after yard sale robbery attempt turns violent. She tapped the headline, her finger trembling. The photo accompanying the article was grainy, barely in focus, but the hollow eyes and sunken face staring back were unmistakable. It was him, the man from the woods. Claire felt a jolt of cold rush through her chest, relief that she had left in time, and a heavier dread that she'd been mere minutes, maybe seconds, from becoming a victim. She stared at the photo, then down at the article. Local man, 46, arrested after violent confrontation at a yard sale on Pine Ridge Lane. Victim escaped with minor injuries. Police urge residents to remain cautious and report suspicious behavior. The words blurred for a second as she blinked, trying to shake off the horror crawling up her spine. Just hours earlier, she'd stood there, alone, surrounded by old furniture and scattered relics of someone else's life. And he'd been there, watching, waiting. Mark looked up from his book beside her, eyebrows knitting together. "You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." Claire swallowed hard, her voice thin. "There was a yard sale today. I stopped for a minute. I didn't see anyone at first. The stuff was just out on the grass like someone had left in a hurry. Then I noticed a man, standing in the woods behind the house. He didn't say a word, just stared at me. Then he followed me when I tried to leave. I don't know, Mark. Something felt really wrong." Mark set his book aside and moved closer, concern creasing his face. "Jesus, Claire. Did you call the cops?" "No." Her voice dropped. "I didn't want to cause a fuss if it was nothing. But now I'm wondering if I should have. I mean, what if I'd stayed 5 minutes longer?" Mark took her hand in his. "You did the right thing by getting out of there. Maybe someone else saw something and called it in." She nodded slowly, but the knot in her stomach wouldn't loosen. The next morning, Claire insisted on driving past Pine Ridge Lane again. Mark sat in the passenger seat, silent, keeping a watchful eye. In the bright daylight, the street looked different. Less eerie, more mundane. But the house was quiet now, the front yard empty. No trace of a sale, no chairs, no picture frames. Just an overgrown lawn and silence. "Looks abandoned," Mark said, eyes scanning the woods. Claire's gaze lingered beyond the house, into the dense trees at the back. She imagined him standing there again, tall, unmoving, waiting in the shadows. "Do you want me to call the sheriff's office?" Mark asked gently. "I don't know." Her voice faltered. I want people around here to know what happened. Someone should know." They pulled to the corner and stopped, engine idling. The woods loomed beyond the empty house like a black curtain. Claire stared into the trees. "We should be careful," Mark murmured, glancing at her. "If someone like that's been roaming around, no one's really safe out here." Claire nodded, the air in her lungs suddenly tight. "That's what I'm afraid of." That night, the farmhouse's windows seemed darker than usual. The wind tapped against the glass like fingers. Claire sat in the living room, blanket wrapped tightly around her, staring at the forest outside. Mark tried to soothe her. "He's behind bars, Claire. They caught him." But she didn't believe it. Not really. Not in her gut. In the days that followed, her unease only deepened. Every time she drove past Pine Ridge Lane, her chest tightened. She couldn't help but glance toward the woods, half expecting to see those hollow eyes watching her again. Then one afternoon, while walking their golden retriever, Rusty, near the back edge of their property where the woods crept close, she heard something. Footsteps, deliberate, heavy, slow. She froze mid-step, the leash tightened in her hand. "Rusty," she whispered. "Come on, boy." The dog whined softly, ears perked, eyes fixed on something behind them. Claire turned her head, quick, instinctive. A figure was slipping between the trees. Tall, thin, wearing a dark jacket that blended into the shadows. "Hey!" she called out, her voice breaking. "Who's there?" The figure didn't stop. It simply vanished into the trees like smoke dispersing in the wind. Claire's hands shook. Her heart thundered in her ears. She turned and ran, dragging Rusty behind her, not stopping until they were back inside the safety of the house. She told Mark everything. "We need to call the sheriff," he said, jaw set. Claire hesitated. "Last time I tried, they brushed me off. Said it was probably a kid messing around." "Claire, this isn't a prank. Someone's stalking you. Keeping quiet won't protect you." That night, she didn't sleep. She sat by the window with a flashlight gripped in her lap. The woods outside whispered with movement. Every gust of wind sounded like footsteps. Every shadow seemed alive. A few days later, the mail came. Among the bills and flyers was a plain envelope. No return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper, typed in black ink. "You shouldn't have come here." Her breath stopped. The paper fluttered in her trembling hands. Mark didn't hesitate. He called the sheriff's department immediately. Officers came and took a statement, promised increased patrols, but Claire could see it in their faces. They didn't take it seriously. Maybe they thought she was paranoid. But the letters kept coming, each more aggressive, each more specific. And Claire knew the truth now. The man from the yard sale hadn't been caught. Or if he had, someone else had taken his place. Someone was out there in the woods, watching, waiting. And this time, he knew her name. I still remember the first few days after I moved into the small, quiet neighborhood on Maple Street. It was early spring, the kind of early spring where the wind still had a bite to it, but the sun lingered a little longer each day. Trees were just beginning to bud, soft green tufts pushing their way out of bare branches like little promises. The air smelled clean, like damp earth and something new. I'd just accepted a job in the next town over, and renting a small house here had made the most sense financially. It wasn't much, just 2 bedrooms, a creaky porch, and a narrow backyard. But it was mine. My first real space. My first time living entirely alone. That mix of freedom and fear hung over everything those first few nights. I was nervous. Not terrified, just aware. Aware of every creak of the floor, every gust of wind that rattled the windows. But Maple Street seemed peaceful enough. The homes were older, sure, but they were well kept, like they'd been lived in and cared for a long time. Most lawns were neatly mowed, many already dotted with tulips and daffodils planted in careful rows. I hadn't officially met anyone yet, but during those first few days I'd nod and smile at folks walking dogs or trimming hedges. People usually returned the gesture. It felt like a good place. There were about a dozen houses on the street, spaced just enough apart to give you privacy, but close enough that if someone sneezed outside, you'd probably hear it. My closest neighbor was right across the street, a small single-story brick house, the kind that looked like it hadn't changed much in decades. It had faded white curtains, always drawn, and a porch with an old wooden rocking chair that never moved. I noticed the porch light was always off, even well after dark. The blinds never shifted. It gave off this heavy kind of silence, like it was holding its breath. Still, I told myself maybe they were just private. Not everyone wants to chat with the new girl on the block. A few weeks in, I started seeing flyers posted around, taped to telephone poles, stuck into mailbox posts. Bright yellow with blocky letters. Neighborhood yard sale. This Saturday, come browse and say hello. I figured it was the perfect excuse to meet people, and I could use a few household odds and ends. The sale was being held at a little blue house 2 doors down from the brick one. The woman who lived there, Mrs. Harper, must have been in her late 60s. She had short silver hair and wore a floral apron over her clothes like she had just stepped out of a movie. When I showed up Saturday morning, the whole street was buzzing. Kids darted between tables, squealing and laughing. The smell of fresh coffee and sun-warmed fabric filled the air. Mrs. Harper greeted me with a bright smile as I stepped onto her lawn. "You must be the new one across the way," she said warmly. "I'm Gladys Harper. Please, have a look around. We've got a little bit of everything today." I smiled, instantly feeling more welcome than I had in weeks. "Thank you, Mrs. Harper. I'm Claire. I moved in last month." "Well, Claire, it's lovely to have you here," she said, patting my arm. "Let me know if anything catches your eye." I wandered between tables stacked with old books, boxes of mismatched glassware, children's toys, faded dresses, and tools. There was something charming about the chaos of it all. For the first time in a while, I wasn't scanning every sound or shadow. I was just browsing, smiling, laughing with strangers. It felt like maybe, finally, I belonged here. Then I turned toward the street. Out of habit, my eyes drifted across to the brick house. And that's when I saw him. A man stood behind the window, framed by those ever-drawn white curtains. Tall, maybe mid-40s, with a face so pale it looked like parchment in the morning light. His eyes were locked on me. Not in a passing glance kind of way. He was watching, still, unmoving. His gaze didn't shift even when I looked directly at him. No blink, no expression. My stomach tightened. I hadn't seen anyone go in or out of that house since I moved in. I had just assumed it was vacant. Now I wasn't so sure. I quickly looked down, pretending to flip through a stack of old magazines. My fingers trembled slightly as I turned the pages. I didn't want to overreact. It could have been nothing, just a curious neighbor. But there was something in the way he stared, like he wasn't really looking at me, but through me. I glanced up again, still there. Same place, same stare. I leaned slightly toward Mrs. Harper, lowering my voice. "Mrs. Harper, do you know who lives in that house? The brick one across the street?" She followed my gaze and her expression subtly shifted, just for a moment. The warmth drained slightly from her features. "Ah, the Matthews place," she said, her tone less cheerful now. "Last I heard, it's just one man living there. Keeps to himself, not much for neighbors." "Do you know him well?" I asked carefully, trying not to sound alarmed. Mrs. Harper hesitated. Her smile returned, but it was thinner now. "Not really. He's quiet. Keeps odd hours. Some say he's got a bit of a past." "A past?" I echoed. Another pause. She seemed to weigh her words. "Let's just say he's had some trouble. Nothing too serious, far as I know. But not the kind of person you'd want showing up at your door uninvited after dark." I nodded slowly, my eyes drifting back toward the window. It was empty now. I swallowed hard, suddenly feeling exposed. "Thanks for letting me know," I told Mrs. Harper, trying to keep my voice light like it didn't rattle me. But it did. Something about the way she said it, the pause before she spoke, the tightness in her voice, it all stuck with me. I forced myself to keep browsing, picking out a couple of mugs and a worn novel with a cracked spine. My hands felt clumsy, like I couldn't quite focus on what I was doing. I smiled, said my thank yous, and made a show of being friendly as I left. But when I turned toward my house, I paused. The man, the one from the window, was gone. For a moment, I felt relief, but then I saw him. He was on his porch now, the old one with the silent rocking chair. He paced slowly, methodically, like someone going through a routine he'd done 100 times. He didn't pretend not to see me. His head turned as I crossed the street, his eyes fixed on me the whole time. Cold, unblinking. I walked faster. My feet felt too loud against the pavement. When I reached my door, I didn't just close it. I slammed it shut and turned the lock with shaking fingers. I leaned against the wood, heart pounding, trying to convince myself I was overreacting. He hadn't done anything, not really. Just watched, just stared. But still, something felt wrong, off, like I'd stepped into someone else's bad dream. That night, I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned, checking my phone every 15 minutes. I left a lamp on in the hallway, trying to pretend the warm glow made the shadows less threatening. But my nerves were a mess. My stomach twisted every time I heard the house creak, every time the wind knocked against the siding. Then at 2 a.m., there was a knock, sharp, rhythmic, deliberate. My body froze before my mind caught up. It wasn't a dream. I sat up in bed, my ears straining. Again, knock, knock, knock. I reached for my phone and crept out of the bedroom, heart hammering. When I reached the front door, I moved to the peephole and held my breath. It was him, Victor Matthews. He stood perfectly still on my porch, just staring at the door. His face was expressionless, unreadable. The porch light threw long shadows across his frame, outlining him against the wood like a figure out of a nightmare. I stepped back quietly, hands trembling. I didn't move. I didn't speak. After a few moments, he knocked again, 3 more times. Then finally, he turned and walked away, Slowly, and without a word, I collapsed to the floor, sitting with my back to the door, pressing my forehead to the cool wood. The silence that followed was worse than the knocking. At least knocking meant I knew where he was. The next afternoon, I couldn't ignore it anymore. I found Mrs. Harper out near her garden and walked over, trying to seem casual. "Hey, Mrs. Harper, can I ask you something else about Victor?" Her hands paused over the soil. She glanced up, eyes cautious. "Not much more to say," she said softly. "His name's Victor Matthews. Been in and out of that house for years. Some stints in jail. Mostly minor things. Petty theft. But there were some assault charges too." I didn't speak. She read the fear in my face. "Claire," she added, voice gentle but firm, "he's not someone I'd want living across from me if I was by myself." That evening I sat on my couch, book forgotten in my lap. I couldn't concentrate. Every sound outside made me tense. Dusk had settled over the street, and the soft orange light outside was fading fast. Then, footsteps, right outside my window. I moved slowly, cautiously pulling back the curtain just enough to see. He was there. Victor stood barely 6 feet away, staring directly into my living room. Not moving, not blinking. Just watching. My heart slammed into my ribs. I yanked the curtain closed and stumbled back. I called the police with shaking hands, trying to keep my voice steady. When the officers arrived, they crossed the street and found Victor sitting on his porch. He claimed he'd just been out for a walk, that he'd never stepped near my house. His voice was flat, like someone describing a weather report. But when they returned to me, they found fresh footprints in the dew-covered grass outside my window, and scratch marks, long, shallow grooves running down the siding next to my living room. Wrong address, he'd told them. Just like that. No explanation, no apology. The police gave him a warning and left. After that, I started taking precautions. New locks, motion lights, a doorbell camera. But I never really felt safe. Not with him across the street, not knowing he could be watching any moment I let my guard down. He never knocked again. But I saw him. Often. Sometimes just a silhouette in the window. Sometimes standing by his porch, pacing in tight, measured steps like a metronome ticking off time. Always facing my direction, never waving, never speaking. Then, one morning, I saw a moving van. Boxes were loaded quietly, quickly. The truck was gone by mid-afternoon. Just like that, he vanished. I asked no questions. Neither did Mrs. Harper. For days, I kept waiting to see him reappear in that window. But he didn't. The house sat empty. Still. But the unease never quite left. Even months later, as I adjusted to life on Maple Street, the memory lingered. The fear softened, but never disappeared. Sometimes I'd catch myself glancing at that house, half expecting to see Victor's pale face behind the glass. Just watching. And even when I didn't see anything, I still felt it. A presence. A weight. I never reported him again. The police had made it clear. No crime, no case. Maybe they were right. Maybe it was a misunderstanding. But deep down, I knew better. Some people don't just go away. Some people wait. Quietly. Patiently. Behind pulled curtains and darkened windows. And maybe, just maybe, that's the scariest part of all.